So quarterback we haven't talked about because, well, he's technically still on a roster. Kirk Cousins. Going to be released. They say if the Falcons release him. They literally said that way back when. But it's going to be
if the Falcons release him, he'll be on a network desk because what we saw from him in the postseason on the desk on a network. I'm not sure if it was ours or not, but he was damn good. He's going to take somebody's seat. I'll say that much about Kirk Cousins. He can make more money. He can make really good money doing TV is what I'll say.
Kirk Cousins, not one to turn down a bag. If you know anything about Kirk Cousins, he has always been. I wonder what his career earnings now are at this point.
I like this game, by the way.
Guess here. I got it up. Guess what his career earnings are.
$242 million.
Low. You're low.
Really? $317 million.
293 for Kirk Cousins. That's real deal cheddar. I actually just saw earlier Kevin Zeitler. He's going to, on that contract, be the third guard to ever go over $100 million in career earnings. So Zeitler has been hitting bags over the course of his career. But the Browns reportedly eyeing Kirk Cousins if he does get released, which feels like tampering because, again, he's on a roster. So I don't know how he can have that report. But this just backs up my theory that after the Kenny Pickett trade, that they're not going to take quarterback number 2. They are going to sign any guy who's ever played quarterback at a modicum of an okay level and just have them all compete with Deshaun Watson.
Super Bowl champion Kenny Pickett.
So this is just another dart throw. Obviously, Kirk Cousins has the Kevin Stefanski connection. He was his quarterback's coach at one point in time and offense coordinator at one point in time back there in Minnesota before he took the Browns job. So makes sense. Now, Kirk Cousins throwing on that Lake Erie.
You think that Achilles was tight last year in the Dome in Atlanta, buddy? Yeah.
We'll see.
Okay.
TBD on how that works out for him. But, yeah, I mean, the Browns, beggars can't be choosers. That's your option at this point if you want a guy who's going to come cheap. But, again, you're right. I think if Kirk Cousins gets cut, Kirk Cousins' contract will be less than his contract would be at Fox, at CBS, at ESPN on a desk. So we'll see if he ends up hanging up if he does get cut. The other one here, the Eagles are the only team in the NFL to have not signed a free agent so far. Are we surprised?
No. No. I mean, they've gotten rid of some pieces, obviously, and they've got a lot of young guys on that roster who are going to be worthy of big-time contracts coming up. I think they're doing a great job of, as you say, you win Super Bowls through the draft and through developing talent. And that's what they've done. I mean, obviously they've sprinkled in some guys like a Mekhi Becton this past year who ended up being a big-time player for them. But they don't need to go out here and make big-time splash moves in the free agency market because of the way they've constructed their team. They don't have to press the panic button. They've rationed well.
Yeah, I am of the opinion that this is by design. I don't think they go out and sign anyone. If they do sign someone, it's going to be someone who was cut from another place because I think this is their year that they know they need to get compensatory picks back, which is going to transition us into the fact that compensatory picks were just announced for this upcoming draft. But obviously, when you lose free agents this year, you get them. So 2025, you get them in 2026. But they know with the contracts that they've signed, with what they have coming up, they're going to need to load up on draft picks. They are going to need a lot of young talent to offset the fact that A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Jalen Carter's going to get a big deal. Jalen Hurts' deal. All these guys are getting paid numbers that are very, very high. And they're going to want to keep them all around. And so they're going to have to kind of cut the fat in the mid-level guys. They're going to have to let the Josh Sweats of the world walk. They're going to have to let the Milton Williams walk. They're going to have to let some guys walk. And they had a bunch of guys hitting free agency this year that they're letting walk. And so they'll have amongst the most and the highest value compensatory picks in 2026 if they just let this free agency period pass. And that's why I think they made the trade for Kenyon Green. It was a low-stakes way of saying, give us a guy who, instead of signing Mekhi Becton or instead of going out and signing a guard to replace Mekhi Becton, we have this guy who could be, if he turns things around, could be the answer. Tyler Steen could be the answer too, but they basically, I think they knew this offseason would be one where they kind of had to stand pat because the roster's so good already. Yeah, you could make small additions to it, but I think they're in fine shape, even losing guys like Milton Williams and Josh Sweat. I think they will be just fine next season. All right, bet story picks, though. Just announced. Cowboys, Ravens, 49ers, Dolphins all come away with 4. They're the guys at the top of this. The teams with third rounders are Minnesota Vikings, who lost Kirk Cousins, Dolphins, who lost Robert Hunt, Giants, who lost Xavier McKinney, even though the Drew Lock signing nixed their 4th rounder that they would have got from Saquon Barkley. And then you had the 49ers getting one for losing D'Amico Ryans and Rand Carthon with that new rule about minority head coaches or GMs going elsewhere. You had the Rams getting one for Raheem Morris, and you had the Lions getting one for Aaron Glenn. So all of those come right away for them. And so those are your third rounders. But I do think compensatory picks, again, no surprise, the Ravens right at the top of that list. They're there every single year. They play the game as well as anyone. It is 4 free picks, if you do it correctly, that are basically wild cards for you that you don't get otherwise. So very, very well-run teams play this game.
It's amazing how all these teams are different. And, you know, we scratch our heads at some of the moves by some teams, and then we've become so accustomed to seeing how well some of the other programs have done.
Yeah. I would highly recommend, if you're interested in learning more about compensatory picks, go to overthecap.com, compensatory picks. They have a page there, and it will show you the cancellation charts, which is awesome to see. So you can go see that, like, hey, the Jets lost Bryce Huff, but because they signed Tyrod Taylor, they don't get a 4th rounder in return. If they hadn't signed Tyrod Taylor, they wouldn't get a 4th rounder in return. The Ravens, on the other hand, lost a ton of guys. They lost Patrick Queen, Jadeveon Clowney, John Simpson, Geno Stone, Kevin Zeitler, Ronald Darby, Devin Duvernay, Gus Edwards, all would have netted them a pick. And they only signed Derrick Henry, the only one. So they get a bunch of picks back because of that. Definitely worth checking out if you're more interested in stuff like that. Next offseason, though, I already mentioned the Eagles. They're going to get 3 back. The Steelers are in line to get 4 back already with all the losses they've had in free agency. That's, again, if they don't net them by signing other guys. And the 49ers are scheduled to get 3 back, again, if they don't sign other guys. So still early, still a number of moves to be made. We'll see how those play out, but definitely something to keep an eye on. Last bit of news. Chiefs restructured Pat Mahomes and Chris Jones, clearing $50 million cap space in 2025. What do we think they're trying to do here, Kyle?
I think they're trying to find a way to scramble and get their feet back under them. I mean, obviously, when you've got a guy like Chris Jones, when you've got a guy like Patrick Mahomes, their contracts are astronomical. And we've seen guys in the past try to move things around, not necessarily to get less money, but to move the money out a little bit, to make some room for some big signings. I'm not quite sure what they have incoming, but obviously with the pieces that have gone out the door in Kansas City, they're going to need to do a good job putting some Band-Aids in there and getting this thing right. I'm not quite sure as it pertains to the exact dollars and cents when they will be arriving for Pat and Chris, but at the end of the day, somebody else is going to have freed up money because of this.
Yes, and I'll just say as a disclaimer, when you clear cap space like this, so basically turn salary into bonus and you clear that cap space, it doesn't necessarily impact future years unless you use that cap space. So with the cap rollover, every single year, your unused cap space rolls over into the next year. So if you clear 50 this year, but then have 50 more on the books over the next few years, again, it does not, because of the rollover, there's no impact. But if you sign guys, if you use that $50 million cap space, well, then you're not rolling over any. So then you have big cap charges next year. So that's why when, the Browns last year, like mid-season, rolled over some of, or turned some of Deshaun Watson's salary into bonus, cleared some cap space on the books this year for next year, but then they didn't actually end up using it. They didn't end up going out and signing anyone. And so it doesn't actually impact them from a cap perspective. That could be the case for the Chiefs. It could just be basically housekeeping, knowing that Chris Jones, Pat Mahomes, they're literally not going anywhere. We don't need to worry about ever cutting them, just getting the space if they want it, if they want to play for it. But it does put, if they do start signing some guys and do start pushing chips to the edge, does put some strain in the future years. It could be like a play for a window that they know is open right now, that they know is basically the end of Chris Jones' career, probably a couple more years of high level play out of him, the end of Travis Kelce's career, the end of some of these guys' careers on that team, that could be just a one last hurrah for this Chiefs team before they kind of have to, I don't want to say blow things up, but they're going to have to draft better and really start a different strategy, because they've kind of gone all in on this core that is getting up there. It's just getting up there.